What is up, everybody? It is your boy Lou Martinez, aka Big Chief Burrito, live with you again here on a Wednesday afternoon. Seems like I just did a 3-hour stream last night with the homie Jason G, where we talked about cosplay, karaoke, acting, and life in general. Let me hit that fan real quick. And today, we're going to be talking about the opera. I saw some information online about the SD opera. I'm going to share my screen with you guys in a second so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And that is that this SD opera is putting on La Bohème, a famous opera, and they're going to do it at Pechanga Arena in San Diego, October 24th. Leave your world in the rearview mirror. It's going to be a social distance, kind of new interpretation of the opera. And, you know, if I'm like you guys, you know, this is kind of, when I think of opera, this is sort of what I remember, right? Everybody remembers the rabbit. This is kind of like my introduction. You can't play too much of it, obviously, but everybody knows, you know, the rabbit in Seville, the barber in Seville, kind of homage that Warner Brothers and Bugs Bunny did a long time ago. That's really my only kind of access to it that I had as a kid, as somebody growing up that was actually into theaters, into improv, into stuff like that. Much more familiar with musicals. But at the end of the day, it's a performance art. So I reached out to SD Opera, and they put me in touch with Colin Ramsey, one of the actors and performers of this year's, you know, sort of reimagined. So we're going to bring him on, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Just making sure everybody's on point and following us. If you want to make sure that you're live, that you're notified when I go live for these interviews. First time I'm doing it in the afternoon, so let's see how it goes. But follow us on Facebook.com/2amburrito. If you want to troll us, as we got last night, on Twitch, go to twitch.tv/2amburrito. To watch the replay, watch one of my older films, to watch a lot of the stuff that we've done in the past, go to youtube.com/2amburrito. And then for the podcast only audio version, go to bigcheapburrito.podbean.com. So today we're talking about opera. sdopera.org is the website to get more information. And joining us today is actor, performer, Colin Ramsey. Thank you for coming on today, man.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Now, obviously, first thing is, this is a reimagined sort of environment for something like this. When did, I mean, have you been involved with SD Opera for a while? And this is the first, obviously, I think this is the first time they're doing this, but have you been involved with them traditionally in the past with other performances?
Yeah, so I made my debut with them, gosh, I guess it was 2 years ago or a year ago in their production of Rigoletto, but that was at the Civic Theater. So that was much more like the normal kind of opera thing that you would expect, right? You go sit in the theater, watch the show, orchestra inside, the whole deal. So it's great to be back with the company. It's like a fantastic company, great people, really, really fun to work with. But yeah, this is very different than anything I've done before. And I think it's probably pretty different for the company itself to be putting something on in a parking lot instead of in a theater.
Right. And I guess at some point, everything, like, you know, like we just saw, there was an article not too long ago that in New York City, Broadway basically said, listen, everything's off until like July 2021. Like, they're making a proactive decision that they're saying, we don't feel good about it, we'll revisit it. But, you know, that seems like, from my perspective, it seems like a drastic step that an entire Broadway community would take. How do you feel about that?
You know, I think it's a really complicated choice for all of these companies. I mean, like, you know, just today, the Lyric Opera of Chicago, which is one of the biggest opera companies in the world, just canceled their whole season through 2021, which, you know, same kind of deal. Really tough choice. You know, I think there's a lot of things that go into those kinds of decisions. And some of it is how much staff you have, how big the company, union contracts. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. And we just don't know when this thing is going to be, when COVID's going to allow us to be in a theater again. And I think some companies are just saying, screw it, we're not going to mess with it. We're not going to try to do something that we know is going to get shut down. And, you know, other companies like San Diego and a couple others, like Pacific Opera Project in LA and the Atlanta Opera, they're all trying to do something. And but whatever the something you're doing is just going to have to be very, very different than the status quo.
Where was the genesis of the reimagining come from? Is that like a publicity person? Is that like is that like something where there was a groundswell of you guys like, hey, why don't we? Was there like an idea session where you guys were like, well, what if we do this?
Well, so I mean, the way that these things usually get put together is there's a production team that's usually led by someone at the opera company itself, and then a director that they hire usually to put the whole thing together. And so in this case, they hired this wonderful woman, Katura Stikhan, and she was set to direct the show. And when this all came up, they had to it was either do we cancel it or do we find some other way to do it. And David Bennett, the head of San Diego Opera, and her and the rest of the whole team kind of figured this out. And so they had bohème, they had a great cast of singers that they were really excited about, and they found a way to do it. And we're lucky we live in California with great weather, lots of parking, and
right.
Exactly. So they figure, I guess, it kind of goes back in a weird way to the roots of California itself to like have these drive-ins, and it's not a usual thing, but they figured out that this was a way to get an audience together and to be able to have people attend something live without breaking social distancing, without allowing it to be outside, giving enough room for the performers as well on stage to be spaced out and safe, and for all the backstage crew. Because anyone who you're in film and everything, how many people it takes to make these things happen, and so it's a big backstage crew as well that we have to take extra good care of, make sure that they're all safe, and that everyone's doing this in a great way. And San Diego Opera has done an amazing job at coordinating all this, which I think is probably also another reason a lot of other companies are deciding not to do seasons, because the amount of work it takes to just put something like this on is just monumental.
Did you guys ever think like those giant like bubble shoots where you guys could be singing the opera and just like clashing into each other just on stage, maybe something like that? That would be
that would be we could all wear GoPros, right?
Yeah, just like
I love it. No, that would be, we have our own version of that in the sense that they actually have taped off the stage into like quadrants, and so everyone on stage has their own like little corner that you kind of just have to stay in. And you can get a little bit close to each other, but ultimately like we're always very far apart from each other, which is a big contrast to the piece, to the subject matter of the piece, because La Bohème essentially translates to the Bohemians, and it's all about these four guys that live in a cramped apartment together, who are all one's a poet, one's a painter, one's a musician, and the character I play, Colline, is a philosopher. And they all just like live in these tight quarters, and they're kind of all on top of each other the whole time. And usually I've done this show a lot. It's a lot of fun when you're in messing around and everyone's having a lot of fun on stage. You're close, you're goofing around, but this time it's like, okay, you're here, you're here, you're here, and that's it. Like don't.
So it's like a real life Zoom meeting. You have to stay in your own little box, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Colin, your sound is a little bit off. Double check your plug and maybe try to get that mic a little bit closer to your mouth.
Sorry about that, man.
Okay, cool.
Is that doing a little better?
Yeah, that's better. Okay,
great.
Yeah, cool. Sorry, I want to make sure everybody can hear this, especially
Absolutely.
on the podcast version. Now, your background, are you like California native? Are you one of the out-of-stater? Where are you from originally?
So I like to think of myself a little bit as a California native, but I was born in New York City.
Okay.
My dad's from LA originally, and my mom's from Hawaii. And then, I was born out on the East Coast. I went to high school out there, but
what part of New York?
I was born in Manhattan.
Okay.
And on the Upper West Side.
Like a city kid. Okay.
Yeah, city kid, full on. And then, but then we moved out here. I went to college in New York City, but then after that, I came back, and basically my entire family is West Coast. Like I said, my dad's from Pasadena. I have a lot of family in LA, a lot of family up north, and the whole rest of my family is in Hawaii. So we didn't really fit on the East Coast terribly well. My mom was always really afraid of snow. But I've been living out here for, I guess, since like 2007, which is
okay. So you're like me. You're a transplant that never went back. Because when I first came out here in like 96, 97, and I would meet New Yorkers that had been out here since like the 80s, they were like, oh yeah, I came out here for the Navy or whatever, and I never went back. And I was like, fuck that, I'm going back to New York.
Yeah.
And then when I eventually moved back to because I'm originally from Queens.
Oh yeah, man.
But when I've been out here for like 20 years without going back, so now I can kind of understand the allure. But I grew up in Queens, and I used to live for a while on the Upper West Side, 102nd and Central Park West. So,
dude, that's my neighborhood.
Yeah.
My parents, when I was living there on my own, I was at 104th between Amsterdam and Columbus.
Yeah, right there, like right. It's like it's a real good entry because it's like between right next to Columbia and like, but then you still have a little flavor there to the west a little bit. Or, yeah, it's a good New York mix.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
So did you? Because I grew up, not a theater kid, but I used to go like sit and try to get rush tickets for Rent and stuff like that when I was younger. Like I grew up, I did acting and improv at HB Studios in the Village when I was younger. Did you grow up loving theater in general, or did you always have like this niche desire or kind of gravitate towards the opera?
Oh, I was so not niche. I had wanted nothing to do with the opera growing up. And I could have actually had more to do with it. So my dad worked for the New York City Ballet. And so I was around like classical music and, the opera, the ballet, all that kind of stuff. But it really didn't hold that much interest to me for a long time. I started out like playing in rock bands, honestly. Like I was a drummer and I like loved to hang out with my friends and play gigs and do stuff like that. And all through college, I played in an indie rock band, and we'd kick around Brooklyn and stay out all night. And it was a blast. But that wasn't like, classical music and opera wasn't at all what I was interested in for a long time. And then it kind of just, I always had an appreciation for it, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And then, when I was starting to get ready to like look at going to college and things like that, I decided I might I sang in choir, and I thought I might as well take some voice lessons and see what that was like. And it kind of just clicked from there. Like I just loved doing it so much, and it just made sense. And then I got scholarships to go to conservatory and study, and it was just awesome. So,
you found that you had an aptitude for it then, right?
Yeah. It, I didn't think that I would, but I had, I guess, like a natural talent for it, whatever. It just made sense in my brain. So yeah, I got into that, and then like I always joke like I caught the bug. Like it's like a disease; it just gets you, and you're just hooked in. And I've been like an opera addict, since. And luckily, I've been able to turn it into a career and a profession, and be able to do it pretty much all the time, and that's awesome. It's a pretty beautiful thing to have.
For like a beginner or somebody that's maybe been into theater, been into musical stuff like that, what is a good entry level for the opera that's not like too overwhelming for people?
Honestly, like La Bohème is my it's my go-to for that. When people say what should I see for the first time, Bohème is perfect. It's not super long, which is a pretty big thing because a lot of times like the length of these shows can just kill you. One of my first operas ever was Die Meistersinger von Nuremberg, which is by Wagner, and it's like 6.5 hours long with intermissions. It's just brutal. I don't know how I ended up continuing to do this without that, with having seen that in the beginning. But yeah, it's Bohème is perfect. It's not very long. The story is really beautiful. It's really touching, and it's all like. Did you ever see the movie Moonstruck?
Yes.
With Cher. So that's the opera that they go to see.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, if you can get behind that, like Nicolas Cage and Cher going to the opera, then it can make sense of that.
As a filmmaker and a film buff, I always associate the opera with some multinational conglomerate cabal that's planning some sort of weird assassination attempt. Totally. There's always a secret meeting, and there's somebody in the rafters with like a sniper rifle,
or take someone out on stage, or in the back seats in the box.
So if you like intrigue and you like being in a scene, the opera. Now you add a bunch of vehicles to the mix. All kinds of crazy, diabolical stuff can happen. But a lot of people wouldn't realize that a lot of movies that they might have watched or stories that they heard might have originally come from opera, right? I mean, it's one of the oldest sort of forms of entertainment, you know, probably before musicals, or, you know, musicals are more like more pomp and circumstance, more like, you know, and the opera is just very classic, very, very, very old school.
Yeah. It's I mean, like you played the clip from Looney Tunes, right?
Right.
And like that, it's amazing how many of the tunes you just kind of have, you know in your brain from whatever are from an opera. Like I mean, it always kills me. Like, I mean, Rigoletto is a great example of a show where you're just going along and you're like, oh, I know that one. Oh, and I know that one. Oh, and that one too. I've heard like all of these in commercials at some point in my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, I mean, there's a lot of those, and the stories, yeah, they, you know, some of them are very ridiculous, like admittedly, but a lot of it is just really, it's stuff that's been out there for a long time. Like, you know, we're talking about Bohème again. Like you mentioned Rent, that's the same thing. So, I mean, it's basically Bohème and Rent. It's the same story. They kind of just took it and adapted it for a more modern audience. And rather than, you know, Mimi, the lead lady of the show, when she dies, she's dying of consumption, of tuberculosis. But in, you know, in Rent, obviously, it's from AIDS, and it, I think it translates really well. But yeah, there's a lot of stories like that have, I mean, even like, you know, what is it, the sad clown that kills everyone? That's like straight out of Pagliacci. Like they just took that and ran with it. Yeah, I mean, what is it there? And the Rice Krispies, Pagliacci also had the Rice Krispies ad.
Like, yeah, you don't even know it, but like you said, you don't realize how big of a part of popular culture it's been for a long time. That even if you don't know opera, something that you've heard is influenced by it. There's references in movies and TV shows that have gone over your head that you might have not have gotten. How many total shows have you done in your career so far?
That's a good question. Let's see. I think individual productions, I've probably done about like 30 or 40 different productions of things over the last several years. And then it's got to be like over 200, 300
wow,
or something like that. But yeah, I hope so. I'm not very good with numbers, as my wife can attest. But
so let's talk about some of the challenges, because I was talking to somebody from your publicity department when I was basically, you know, saying, you know, I saw something that came across my feed literally, and it was like, hey, La Bohème in a parking lot,
yeah,
Pechanga,
right?
Like, and I was just like, okay. Side note to the people that watch my stream, and last night at 10 o'clock, I had my lazy ass dog sleeping in the background, and as you can tell, it's 2 o'clock. And my lazy ass dog is just sleeping in the background because that's what they do all day. But we were talking a little bit about the challenges, obviously. So you bring somebody on, they sort of say, hey, this is what I think we can do to salvage this season, to sort of put on our performance. Let's stay creative. There's a way that we can do it safely. There's been stand-up comics that have been doing drive-up shows.
Yep.
San Diego International Film Festival just did several drive-in movie shows. My friend that we had on last night is doing a socially distanced trivia night at Tin Roof San Diego. You know, and they're like in the karaoke event industry. Yeah. You know, you said you've done 200 performances. I've been in the theater. It's, you know, it's all about the rehearsal, the this, the that. But how, you know, from the beginning, how has this been extremely different?
Well, I think from the like rehearsing and putting it together, from that perspective, it's been really strange to just not be as close to people. So, you know, like this is something that when we all came in for the first day, none of us had been to a rehearsal for anything since March. And, you know, some earlier than that. I think my friend Andrea was saying it was, you know, I think hers was January, February. And so you take this, you know, you're used to doing this like almost every month. You show up somewhere, you meet a bunch of people, you become close friends, you go out for drinks after rehearsal, whatever, you know, there's a social life attached to it all. And it's kind of a little more non-existent here because, you know, there's not really bars to go to. You know, we can go have dinner, but maybe, you know, we're sitting outside. It's a, you know, And some of that works really well, but it just doesn't happen as often. And we're also all trying to be conscious of the fact that since we're here doing this show and focused on it, we don't want to take any undue risks. We want to really be as responsible as possible to make sure this thing goes off and there's no hiccups. But I think showing up the first day and like not giving everyone a hug, standing at a distance from each other, not shaking hands, like that whole thing felt really, really strange. And even showing up to rehearsal, we've got a whole safety protocol where we have to kind of check in on this app telling, how we're feeling, essentially, if you had a positive test, if you have a fever that day, and then, temperature checks, the whole 9 yards, and, you walk on and rehearse. And it's felt very
definitely can't do the mirror exercise when you start off to warm up. You can't be too close and be like, or nobody, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, we're not even allowed to like sing towards each other. So,
okay.
An interesting thing is, right, so that we have our 6 foot social distancing, which when we're standing like shoulder to shoulder, that's what we abide by. But if we have to face each other to sing, I think our union, AGMA dictates that we have to be 12 feet apart.
Okay.
So most of the time we're just like as flat out as can be, and if we're turning in, we need extra space. And that's another funny thing when you're rehearsing. Usually you're not like, you're concerned about, can the audience see my face? Like, am I turning up stage for a dramatic reason? Does this work? Here it's like, oh no, you can't face that way because then we're going to break, our 6 foot rule, or and so there's a lot of little things like that we have to pay attention to that have almost nothing to do with putting on the show, other than we're just following our safety protocols.
I mean, I think a lot of the work that goes on between actors and between like stage managers and actors and stuff like that happens, before and after the rehearsals, smoking a cigarette together outside and talking about like, hey, let's talk about, let's deal with this. Let's have a drink afterwards. Let's get this done. So that camaraderie, I'm sure, is a little bit affected. It's not the same to be yelled at by a stage manager if it's like from 100 feet away, if they're not getting into your face. Yeah, exactly. I need you off book or something, or something exactly. Like that, right?
Yeah, no, there's none of that. There's none of the, and like being all cramped in backstage, like, sure. I mean, the funny thing is our dressing rooms right now are like the locker rooms at Pechanga. So, yeah, so we're like, it feels like we're, it's strange in that way. We're like, we have, the San Diego Seals logo on the floor and the lockers and everything, and which is pretty cool, but it's, it just isn't what we usually do. It's not that tight theater community, which is something that, anyone who's done theater in any way knows what it's like to be back there with everyone cramped together, waiting to go on stage, waiting for stage management to be like, all right, you're on and go. And
I remember when, because I always tell the story. Well, I was sophomore year in high school. I joined the dramatic arts and theater department because there was a girl I liked as part of drama club, and I was and we did Dracula, and I was a special effects technician. All I did was run the fog machine. And then my junior and my junior year, I was the lead in a musical called Little Me, Neil Simon musical. That was actually written for Sid Caesar, because the lead got kicked out 2 weeks before the opening night. And then I played Oscar Madison my senior year. But I still remember my sophomore year, the first opening night, where they're like, oh, we do these. It's tradition. You do this circle. Everybody sits around on the floor and they like hold hands and they just kind of talk, and like everybody kind of releases whatever anger they have to each other. Yeah. Everybody's like, let's do this show. So there's a very communal, familiar connectivity thing of the theater that I'm sure you guys are lacking, but do you try to make up with it with just sort of nailing the technical elements and doing individual work, or how do you compensate for that?
Yeah, the beautiful thing is this cast is really pretty top notch, and everyone really knows the show. They know what they're doing. They know how to bring something, to the stage. And so I think where we find that is when we're on stage, because that's where we can really, where we take our masks off and we can see each other's facial expressions, and we can have like that real human interaction that is a little bit stilted outside of rehearsal. And, we get to really live through this thing there in a different way than we usually do. And I think just the fact that we're making music together, which is something that again we're used to doing all the time, and we haven't done in months. You know, we haven't. None of us have been in a room with a bunch of other singers singing and with the piano, and we got to hear an orchestra last night. You know, these are things that like don't happen in 2020. That's really what brings us together, I think. And
was the orchestra rehearsing on its own before? Is that you guys separate and then you come together, or is it just the first time that they come together?
A little bit. So it's the San Diego Symphony, which they play together all the time, and they had a couple rehearsals on their own without us, and then yesterday we did our first rehearsal with them. And it's cool because I shouldn't say it's cool. It's a little bit frustrating at times because they're all the way Rafael Payare, the conductor, he's probably 500, 600 feet away from us. So we're always like looking out to see if we can catch him and know what's going on. And so what we're getting is all through monitors on stage. It's all mic'd, and then they're all like masked and shielded up as well. But it works. But it definitely works pretty well. But it is a whole different thing. That we don't feel as connected to them as usual. One of the things that I really like when we do a show, usually is we go. We do a rehearsal called the Sitzprobe, which is German basically for like seated rehearsal. And it's the first rehearsal with the orchestra. And we show up, you get on stage, they're in the pit, you sing through the whole show. And usually, hopefully you get introduced. And so you kind of like lean over the pit and you say hi. Everybody kind of gets to see your face. And that's like the only real like interaction that we get to have with the orchestra outside of like catching them in the hallways. And this feels a little, again, we don't get that connection in the same way. But, like I've been posting stuff, about the symphony and, waving at them. So hopefully, we'll find a way to connect, but that's about the best we can do right now.
All right. We're talking with Colin Ramsey at CB Ramsey. That's Instagram, right?
Yep.
Where you can kind of follow his adventures as part of the cast of La Bohème playing. Let me make sure I have this right here. Starting, right?
Saturday.
Yeah, let me put this up for everybody. Saturday.
Woo.
Saturday, October 24th through November 1st at the Pechanga Arena, San Diego. That that's in San Diego, right? That's not the Escondido one, or where?
No, it's in San Diego. It's the one that's right at like the 5 and the 8.
Okay, so it's the old San Diego Sports Arena, basically.
Arena, there we go.
Yeah, Sports Arena. Okay, at previously called Sports Arena, now it's called Pechanga Arena, but it is still the old school Sports Arena. So it's pretty local to San Diego. And is there a limit to the amount of vehicles and stuff? How does that work for them?
I'm not exactly sure, but there's a lot of space in that lot. So they're ready for cars, they're ready for people, and there's 4 performances. So get in there. There's I think just get a good spot. I think they have 2 levels of ticketing. So there's basically like general, and then I think they have like a kind of premiere area, which is probably a little bit closer to the stage. But the cool thing is, since they're doing it like an old school drive-in where you can tune into your radio and get the sound in your car.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's all going, and then they have a full camera crew shooting it live that'll be projected up on big screens as well. So if you're all the way, you can go all the way in the back and hang out, and you can tailgate it if you want and watch it all up on the screens. It's pretty cool. It's going to be really pretty rad, actually.
No, I mean, in a time where people are sort of trying to figure out and negotiate what they're willing to do and sort of to just get a sense of normalcy in their lives. Yeah. It seems that some of these events, even though, people are taking utmost care for it, are necessary for people to be able to feel like life is a little bit normal for a little bit, right?
Well, I mean, when's the last time we went to just a concert of any kind? Went to a bar and heard a band play? It feels like an eternity ago, even though it really probably wasn't that long in the cosmic scheme of things. But, you really start to miss that stuff. And even just being in a place with a lot of other people where you're all experiencing the same thing. Even, when you're on Zoom, whatever, that's fine. It's not the same thing as being somewhere where you have this kind of palpable energy. And, I think we're going to actually be able to do it. I mean, and like you said, some stand-up comedians have done this drive-in thing. I know there have been a couple concerts here and there that have done the drive-in thing and worked pretty well since this, whole COVID thing's been happening. But I mean, we'll be like one of the first opera companies to really be out there doing this in this kind of a way. And I think it's going to be really fun and different. I mean, it's just going to be a chance to do something, right?
Have you been staying busy during this? I mean, obviously March comes, everything gets sort of canceled and pushed back. As a performer, how did you sort of did you have that initial this will only be for a couple of weeks? This like denial. How did you deal with it initially? And then how did you stay creative during that time?
Well, I remember when it happened. I was working on a show in Florida. And, different states were starting to shut down, and we had one performance left, and they were thinking, oh, well, we'll just, we should do it. It's fine. And then, I think 2 days before, the governor of Florida shut it all down. So, when that happened, I was expecting it to go on for a little while. I didn't think it was going to be this long, honestly. My sister-in-law and brother live in Beijing. And so they kind of went through this back in December, January, February. And so in my mind, I was like, oh, well, they're opening things up there. It'll be 2-3 months max. But once it got going, I honestly I just didn't really want to do any music for a while, which is kind of sad. But I was so frustrated with the entire situation, and in some ways, how companies were dealing with it, and what it meant for performance of music and theater as a whole. There's the doomsday, predictor in me was like, oh, well, this is going to be the end of opera companies all over America. Broadway shutting down, theaters are shutting down. Nobody's going to do anything. They're not going to survive this. But of course that was ridiculous. People just get creative. And, what I didn't do very much music, but I started working at a coffee shop, which was, it's been pretty interesting all in all. There's, now I'm building a fall menu for them, which is pretty fun. So I found a way to do something kind of creative. And in addition to that, my wife and I started this voice lesson business where she's been primarily taking on the mantle of teaching, local kids. And actually now it's, all over the country. We have students from the age of 6 years old all the way to 75. And so we've gotten to be creative in helping other people find their voices, which was really good and I think really productive and made us feel better. And we got a puppy. That helps too.
Post a link to that so I can share it too if you want.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Now, when we talk about the differences in skill sets and stuff for being in a musical, for being in an opera, obviously you said you realized it. Did you sort of realize that yourself, or were people around you that were in the industry sort of the ones that were like, look, dude, you have a voice for the opera, and how do you specifically work on that set of skills?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I really like you said, if there was someone in the industry, I went to take voice lessons with a guy who's been my voice teacher for pretty much my whole life, and I just remember he was kind of like, you could probably do this. I was like, take it or leave it, whatever, we'll see. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of just, and then when it made sense, he was like, no, dude, if you want to be a singer, if you want to try to sing opera for real, I think you can make it. And so and that built a lot of confidence in me. And then I've had a lot of mentors and people along the way who have really helped, guide me along to show me, or to, help make me feel confident enough in this to feel like I could really do it. I had a lot. I mean, you have a lot of help to get here, whatever here is. And the training part of it is actually, I think, it's probably my favorite part of it in a lot of ways, because it's not something that ever ends, right? You know, it's not like we're in the NFL. You train super hard, you play like, you know, 7 seasons, and then you're out. You know,
it's not muscle memory. It's training and repetition, right?
yeah. I mean, there's a degree of like muscle memory because, you know, we're working muscles, but they're just really, really small. You know, like, you know, we're like lifting like tiny little dumbbells in our throats.
Right.
But the process is so fascinating because it really was just, you know, taking lots and lots of voice lessons and coachings and working on style and languages, because it's not just, you know, you don't just figure it out yourself, right? Like a lot of pop singers, they kind of just find their way, and then they have some really, really cool voice, and you're like, man, that's incredible. Like, you know, like how's Beyonce doing that? And, you know, if she didn't go to school and study for it and go through this whole process to get there, she, you know, had a gift and she worked on it and she built it out more herself with some, you know, with producers, and found her sound, her unique thing. But in opera, there's like this whole technical thing that you have to get through, which is you just have to be able to sing loud enough and organized enough to be able to sing over an orchestra in a big theater. So like the Civic Theater is actually a pretty big, it's like what, 3,200 seats or something like that, which is sizable for opera. And you have to learn and build the strength in your throat to be able to sing loud enough for that. And then in addition to that, then you have the whole language piece, which is really, really, it's really fun because, you know, like I grew up speaking just English. I'm not one of the lucky people. Like my mom's half Chinese, and I'm still mad at her for not like teaching us Chinese as kids, because that would have been so useful. But we, you know, like as a singer, you have to learn how to deal in other languages. And so like for singing, we mostly use Italian, French, and German. But I also sing in Russian. There's a lot of operas in Spanish, Czech. Like, I mean,
do you learn the phonetics of it before you learn what it actually means?
So in a dream situation, you always learn what you're saying first, right? You want to learn what it means, but I think it's also crazy to think that you're going to get to the level of understanding the poetry of a lot of these languages in the original with that, you know, right away. And so like my spoken Italian, French is, you know, German is okay, but I'm a really good faker. That's what everyone like learns how to do is you know, you go to school, and there's actually, when you go to school for singing, there are diction classes. So they'll literally sit down and they'll like talk you through how to speak the language as correctly as possible. And you don't worry, you know, you're worried about what the words mean, but you have to learn how to sound convincing. And that's, you know, that's easier said than done. And I think I was lucky. I kind of had a bit of a gift for it, but it's not, you know, it's really hard, especially jumping back and forth between the different languages, because of course, you know, you have to basically build an accent in French, German, Italian, English, and then of course, if you're doing an American opera in English, you're singing with kind of an American, like broadly general accent. And if you do like an English opera, like then you have to do an English accent. So I mean, we're a lot like actors in that way, but we just have the unfortunate problem of having to sing in the original language. And then you have things, you know, you'll go and you'll sing somewhere, and some Italian person in the audience will be like, it wasn't very good.
Yeah, your German sucked or your Italian sucks.
Yeah, exactly. Right? No, they'll tell you. Your dog is adorable, man.
Oh yeah, that's my other boy, Baxter.
Oh, Baxter. I got hey Lonnie, I got one sleeping at my feet right now.
Yeah, they just watch me. They're like, "Are you talking to me? Is this snack related, or what are you doing there, staring at your monitor?" Yeah. I wanted to play a clip. We're talking with at CB Ramsey, Colin Ramsey, actor, singer, part of this La Bohème, starting October 24th at the old the Pechanga theater parking lot in San Diego, which was the San Diego Sports Arena previously. You can find out more about it by going to sdopera.org. I literally just scroll across my screen that they were doing a performance of La Bohème, and I thought it was incredibly interesting to just kind of find out, go a little bit behind the scenes as to kind of what it takes to make a decision during a pandemic that the show must go on. So what I want to play right now is a little piece from a previous performance from the SD Opera. And let me make sure I got it queued up here. And let's take a listen. Too close, too close. Wow. Sorry, I think I had it muted there for a second. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, that's Steve Powell, man.
Okay, without knowing anything about that, the one guy got really bad news via Telegram, and the other guy was making fun of him for being such a little pussy about it. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
You could do a whole thing of that. Just like play opera clips and then tell us what's actually happening.
Lou interprets opera clips. That's a new bit that I can do. Tell us a little bit about the cast, because I got some information in some information that I got sent, and the first thing I kept saying was Grammy winner, this and that, blah blah blah, top-rated vocalist, international superstar, and I'm like, man, because I mean, all I know is like Placido Domingo and Enrique Palazzo. That's all I. That's all I.
Good.
That's all I know here in terms of like opera. What does opera superstardom look like? Is that, because I mean, I know that's like the top level that is worldwide recognized, but there's got to be another, large segment underneath, right?
I mean, it's so funny. So there's there's the Placido Domingos and the Pavarottis and the people who kind of like seem to transcend opera famous, as I always like to call it. Like, there's being famous and then there's being opera famous. Like. And it's like being like a Bravo TV star, like the people that watch Bravo and know all the housewives and everything, they know all of them, they know the whole deal, they're committed, and that's kind of what it's like being opera famous. Like, you're not, some random Joe off the street doesn't necessarily know who you are. But I mean, the people that they assembled for this are just, it's kind of unbelievable. Like, it's a really, really top level cast to have here in San Diego. Or just to have anywhere, honestly. Ana Maria Martinez, who's singing Mimi, is just one of the most, she's just such an unbelievably classy, beautiful, emotional singer. I had the privilege of singing a small part in a production of Madama Butterfly that she sang in Santa Fe back in 2018. And actually, the tenor was our same tenor, Josh Guerrero. And I mean, they were so unbelievable then, and she is continuing to just blow my mind and just sing so exquisitely beautiful. And she's sung all over the world with everybody, you know, like you name the house, she's been there. And then of course we've got our tenor, Josh Guerrero, he's an LA guy. His family is like in LA and Vegas, and he's just so unbelievably talented. He's one of those voices that in opera doesn't come along very often, and it's just so exciting and so beautiful and emotional, and it just really carries the music and everything so beautifully, and they're both just such strong performers. It's very exciting to have them, and I think a lot of the San Diego Opera people probably already know Josh pretty well because he sang a couple concerts for the company recently. Then we have our Marcello and Musetta. So basically, in the opera, there's kind of two couples that make up the bulk of the story. It's Mimi and Rodolfo, soprano and a tenor, and then Marcello and Musetta. And Marcello is the painter, and Musetta is his on again, off again girlfriend, who is kind of we've all like known a Musetta. She's just a total spitfire. She's like volatile, sexy, crazy, all of the above, but also really sweet. And towards the end, you get that. And that's we've got Alex Elliott and Andrea Carroll. And Andrea and I actually went to college together way back when, and I haven't seen her in many, many years, but she's been just killing it over in Europe. She's been singing at the Vienna Staatsoper and a bunch of other places, and just is absolutely fabulous. She is just such a star, and I think she'll be taking over the world shortly if she isn't already. And Alex just had a number of really big breaks. He sang production of Pearl Fishers, the Metropolitan Opera, which is the biggest house in America, and then did the same thing in Houston. And he's got a bunch of really exciting things coming up. And yeah, it's an unbelievable group of people who are, and being opera famous is, they're it, whatever that is.
Who are you more jealous of? Somebody that just did a show like at the Met, or somebody who just did a show like in Sydney at like the Opera House?
Ooh, these days, Sydney, man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, first of all, that's like such a cool house, but like, I've lived in New York. Like the Met's amazing. The Met's really cool, but I want to go see Sydney again.
Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of, what makes a good opera singer, because I feel like if you're a musician and you do a cover, or if you're a filmmaker and you do like a remake of a film, I always kind of like to see what their interpretation is. How much of being successful or considered good at opera is imitation and repetition of what's the established sort of peak versus interpretation of a specific piece by a performer? Is there space for saying like, yes, this is what traditionally is seen as a quality performance versus like an up and coming singer that might interpret it in a different way? Is there nuance in that?
Absolutely. And nuance is exactly the right word. That's a great question, by the way. It's a really, really good question. Because it's one of I think the things that opera struggles with as an art form the most is, we have more tradition than almost anything else, right? Like, movies have really only been made since turn of the century. I mean, like the 20s even, right? Like, film is so relatively new, and opera has been going much longer than that. And so sometimes you're performing pieces that are, from the, 1600s, written in Italy by Claudio Monteverdi, and it's, and you think. And so what I think the challenge for opera is, and where the I guess the room for nuance is today, is figuring out where performance practice, so like performance practice being the traditions, right? The expectation of what you need to sound like, the notes you need to sing, the style in which you need to do it, where that all picks up, where that comes to, and then where, when you get how much of the new you get to add, where can you find that line? And I actually think these days there's been a lot more room to allow people to do their own thing and to have, bring something new to the table in terms of like their interpretation, the physicality. A lot of these characters like have been, like a lot of female characters historically have been portrayed very demure, very, feminine in that sense of the word. And now can be a lot more visceral and a lot more, strong. And that's, I think, a really great thing that's been happening. But yeah, it's really, depending on the role and the singer, how much of, yourself you really want to bring to it versus how much of, what you need to deliver. Like Bohème has a great example of it. There's this one passage in the tenor aria in the first act where there's this big high C, and everyone, it wasn't written in the original score. There's no high C, but everyone expects this stupid high C. Like it doesn't, like you have to do it. Otherwise, you'll walk out on stage and go, La Speranza. And the whole audience will be like, oh, really? That? You didn't do it? Yeah, they'll be so disappointed. And so it's this convention that has come around that you have to obey. But within that, you can find, you have to figure out the way that you are going to do it. And like Josh has a big, beautiful voice. He's not a high C tenor. That's not like, there's some guys like that's all they do. They just want to sing high notes all the time. And it's a different thing. So, he comes at it from a different place than a more like lighter voiced lyric tenor would. And so you have, they find their path within that. But it's very tricky. And some singers do more of it, I think, bring more of themselves to it than others, with varying degrees of success. Because, if you come in and you sound like a pop singer,
yeah,
that's like breaking a convention too far. You know what I mean? Like you can't come in and like start riffing.
You can't go in and come in like William Shatner and just start like,
oh man,
like speaking opera, right? You can't do that.
Although I would pay big money to hear William Shatner do something.
No, that would be awesome.
It would be hilarious.
Do you because you're training and have this flexibility with your voice. Do you guys ever do a lot of like voiceover work or stuff like that to stay busy? Is that something that kind of is up your alley because of your skill?
It's something that comes up a lot. I know a couple singers that have done some and kind of found their way into that business. It's like something that I'd love to do more of, or to just do, period.
Right.
Because it's like, because it is like we train our voice.
Not turning down work.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like, hey, anyone need voiceover? Right. Is hit up at CB Ramsey Instagram.
In a world.
Yeah. In a world where, we train our voices to do stuff. So you want to use it for as much as you can. But, again, like our speaking voices are different than our singing voices to a certain degree. Like there's a lot of layover between the two. But ultimately, I know some people who have these like big, booming singing voices, and then you hear them speak and they're like, hi, how you doing? I'm like, oh, that's not what I expected. So I think it depends on the person, but I would love, I think all singers would love to do voiceover work more, or at all, period. And it's strange that it doesn't happen more often, but yeah, hit me up. Make it happen.
So to recap, smoke lots of cigarettes, drink lots of whiskey, train your voice. When you is there such a thing as like a transition where you can, as an opera singer, if you're classically trained and if you learn all the classics, is it basically like if you're going to put out like the equivalent of a solo album, would that be what it would be? It would be like, Colin Ramsey's interpretation of this, or is there a space for people to sort of create new pieces? Again, comes from like my ignorant question list, but in terms of like,
these are great questions, man.
In terms of creating new content in the opera style.
Yeah. So, there's a long tradition of, singers releasing, it'll call it, be like a recital album. And that's essentially like that singer singing songs from different operas. And they're doing it, with, their way, theoretically, at that point. There's no conductor telling them this is how you're going to sing this phrase. Like they're making the calls. It's their version of that famous aria. And so that's like a pretty established convention. They're not, singers writing their own, that doesn't really happen because,
Right.
you know, I hate to say we're trained monkeys, but we kind of are. Like,
Right.
you know, we learn this set of skills that is really applicable to doing this kind of music, but what we're doing isn't necessarily writing the music. And it, you know, even if we're coming up with you know, ornaments or riffs or whatever to put into it, that's just embellishment on the actual music. We don't sit down and write it. That being said, I think singers do occasionally. Some singers I know have worked with composers to put stuff together. And then, of course, there's the rare occasion that a singer is also a composer, and they'll write music, and, you know, they can put that together and perform it themselves. But that's, you know, that's a totally different thing.
Yeah, that question comes just from watching season 1 of BoJack, where they were trying to write a rock opera, and I was just like, so that's kind of like where I was coming from. Like, is that really a thing? Like a rock opera, like a modern rock opera?
I mean, what, like R. Kelly did his Trapped in the Closet hip
I guess that hip opera. I guess there's a lot of blending. There's a little space between those genres. I love working as a filmmaker, as a film director. I love working when I have theater actors that audition, because they're very loud, and they hit their marks. They're good with rehearsal. And usually the only thing that I have to do is have them tone down a little bit, because they, you know, theater actors and musical actors, they come in here, and I'm like, all right, you're good, but we got microphones that's going to pick up your voice. We don't need you, you know, acting, you know, we don't need you all the way there. But do you guys have so I guess the opposite would be true for the opera. We need you to keep raising it up.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. So, I mean, it really depends on the size of theater is a big part of that. Like, you know, opera has to, by nature, it kind of has to be big, because there's a lot. If you're on a big stage, there's a big orchestra playing, and a bunch of people on stage, and a lot of stuff going on. You know, it's not subtle in the sense. You know, you can't just like do little glances and little sighs, or, you know, small things don't read very well in a big theater. If you're lucky to do something in, you know, like they call it chamber opera, which is just smaller scale, where people are closer to you, they can really see what's going on, you know, you can be a lot more subtle, but then your subtlety is close to actually like a theater actor, which is, you know, what you're saying. And so when you get on film, it's a completely different ball game entirely. And so, like, I think that would be, getting an opera singer to be great on camera is, I think, a much more difficult thing, because we're so used to being big and escalating it and being all the way up there, and then you have to bring it all the way down. I mean, I can't, like, it would feel like, I think most of us would feel like we were doing absolutely nothing. You know, because we just, you know, we think, well, wait, like, I'm not waving my arms, I'm not like running across the stage. Right. You know, like, I'm not taking my big climactic hero moment, whatever. Like, it just would feel so much less.
Now, here's an interesting question for you. There is a disagreement during a dress rehearsal, right? There's a disagreement during how a scene or a transition should play. The conductor's got his idea, the stage manager's got their idea, the director's got their idea, and the lead singer has their own idea of how it should be. Who can out diva the rest of those to be the person that gets their way? Who's got the juice right there? Conductor, stage manager, director, or the lead actor or actress?
Okay, I think the first part of this is, if one of the people is significantly more famous than the others.
Okay, like a guest conductor or somebody like that, or a guest.
You know, like Daniel Barenboim comes in and he says, "No, this is how we're doing it." Most of the time, everyone would just be like, yeah, okay, that's how we're going to do it. That's what we're doing, Maestro Barenboim. But in general, I think in opera, for the most part, if it has to do, so they actually kind of separate out tasks a little bit, right? So the director is really responsible for all the action on stage, and the conductor is very much responsible for the music, and that's it. So it's pretty rare these days that conductors will step in, and I mean, unless there's something really
like it's not sounding right to me, or we need to reimagine this or something like that.
Yeah, like if a conductor came out and said, you know, I really disagree with the way that we're killing, the soprano at the end. Like, I know they're stabbing her with a knife, but I really think that we should make her drink bleach, whatever that doesn't really happen. So usually it falls, with that kind of stuff, it can go to the director. I don't think I've had any occasions in my career where a singer has really put their foot down and just said, absolutely not, we're not doing that.
Unless it was like a Placido or somebody like that, right?
Yeah, and then if you're Placido, you can just be like, nope, and everyone goes, all right, it's a no. Thank you very much.
Do you find yourself calling people maestro a lot?
Oh yeah, my God. Like it depends where you are too. But like everybody's a maestro, right?
Everybody's a maestro.
The conductor's the maestro. The well-established singer who's has some years on you, they're probably a maestro. The guy playing the piano is probably a maestro. Yeah, that title gets thrown around a little too much for my taste. But I think I'm one of the people that likes to say like maestro is a title that's earned. Mm-hmm. When you really when you know your stuff, when you come out there and you demonstrate that you are a master of the music, then yeah, maestro all the way, 100%. Otherwise, I'm like, okay, Jim, what are we doing?
You didn't hit your mark there.
Yeah.
Ramsey.
No, there's a lot of maestros out there.
All right, so we're talking with Colin Ramsey. He is part of the cast of this October 24th at Pechanga Arena, San Diego, which is the old sports arena. October 24th through the 1st, San Diego's first drive-in opera.
Yeah.
La Bohème. And you're going to be able to hear it through your car stereo while watching it live. There's different levels of tickets. And go to sdopera.org to find out more about it. It's a socially distanced musical experience. And to follow Colin and his adventures as an opera singer, you can follow him at CB Ramsey. Like I said, sdopera.org. And to learn more about Colin's program about helping people find their voice, you can go to that place right there.
Rockstop Vocal Studio.
So what can people expect when they pull up October 24th? What do you feel like the experience is going to be like for them?
Well, that's a great question, considering I've actually never been to a drive-in movie either, so my experience base is pretty low. But I think the overall experience is going to be one of camaraderie and communal experience. It's the music is going to be gorgeous. I heard the symphony play the score last night. They're fantastic. The San Diego Symphony is just a really first-rate orchestra. They're going to play beautifully. The singers are incredible. So you're going to get this incredibly high quality of music in a place where you wouldn't usually have it. Usually it's like velvet ropes in the seats in the theater and everything. And it's going to feel very, very different. But I think,
I said, a lot of spies. There's not going to be that many spies at this one.
No spies, no snipers in the corner. No poison in the props bucket backstage.
Tom Cruise is not going to have a mask walking around. Or no, it's Tom Cruise. Sometimes he's in San Diego. He might go to the opera.
You never know. He could be there. But yeah, I think it's gonna just be really amazing to be sitting out there experiencing like a production of any kind right now. There's with the amount of time we're all spending at home, not going out, not being social, and even we go out to dinner, like you go hang out with your parents or your family or whatever. Like most of us aren't doing a lot. Even if we're doing something, it's still not as much as we usually would be doing. And I think it's gonna be a great experience to have, or just an opportunity to have that feeling of community, and to be able to like clap for something. Everyone's suspecting there's gonna be a lot of horn honking instead of applause, and so I think that part of it's all gonna just be really, really fun, really exciting and different, and it's an opportunity to get out and do something more than anything else.
Yeah, I'm assuming people will be able to pull up their car, either like if they have a truck, pull up the bed, sit there, or maybe pull out their lawn chairs, maybe get yourself a little beverage.
If you don't bring a beverage, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, a little something else. Get yourself in the nice La Bohème mood. mellow yourself out. We are in San Diego, California, which is a legal state.
Sit out there, light up a fatty, like have a good time, man. That's like 100% the play.
Absolutely. All right, I already got mine ready here.
Oh, you're all set, dog.
I'm ready to go. But it's a 2:00 stream, so I can't really, be when it's like a late night stream. That's when
then you're all in.
Then I'm all in. I was doing trivia last night, and I was out of my mind, and they kept asking me all these little questions, and it doesn't happen. The homie Jason, like I said, he's third. Okay, so this is gonna be this Saturday, October 24th. Yep. So if people want to get out, two things that I've talked about recently. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. at Tin Roof, there's going to be socially distanced trivia hosted by my homie Jason G. This October 24th till November 1st, there's going to be 4 performances for you to be able, right? Is that what you said?
Yep.
4 chances for you guys to be able to go watch SD Opera, watch a live performance, support a local institution.
Local all the way.
And obviously, like I said, people, even the people that talk crap about the arts, over these last 6 months, how did you get through your day? You got through your day by binging a show, watching a movie.
Hell yeah.
Reading a book, watching YouTube videos, watching people that are creating content. So support local artists when you guys get a chance. So I'm hoping that the artistic and, opera community and actor communities in San Diego, Chula Vista, National City come out to support you guys. And I appreciate you taking the time to come. Once again, follow him at ACB Ramsey. His personal website for his stuff is this, sdopera.org for more information. My name is Lou Martinez with facebook.com/2mburrito, twitch.tv/2mburrito. youtube.com/2mburrito, etc. And again, Podbean. So I would, I don't know if I'm going to have you play an opera singer because that would be too cliche, but I hope at some point, once all this is all settled in, that we can steal you from the opera world for a little bit once you're in San Diego and put you in one of the movies.
Yeah, man.
Mr. Ramsey, because
I'm nearby.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad we got a chance to chat. I'll make sure that we're following each other and stuff on social media, Facebook, whatever, so we can stay connected. Yeah. And I sometimes ask the guests for a request, which is, if possible, next time you're on stage or you guys are rehearsing, if you could record yourself and just do like a quick, hey, you're watching Fireside Chats video at some point in my rehearsal, I would appreciate that if you could do it like in a super opera voice.
Yeah.
That's my only ask. The
most opera voice possible.
Yeah, like a super opera man voice. If you could do something like that for me and shoot me that, I would greatly appreciate that. But any last words, anything else you want to tell us about this and why people should go?
I think I forgot to mention, but it's the tickets are per car. Okay. So it's like, I think it's like $200, but it's for your whole car. So you want to like get you get 6 people in there, whatever, you get your whole family, you can go in, drive in, set up your tailgate, pick up some In-N-Out. There's an In-N-Out around the corner.
Oh yeah. There's that big circular taco shop right there.
Oh yeah. Yep, there is. Oh man, that's what we're talking about. Get that 2 a.m. burrito.
Yeah. I'm saying. I'm not against it. So again, man, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for the SD Opera for very quickly putting this together so I could have you guys on. Obviously, I talk a lot about film, acting, and stuff, but I think it's important to expand the arts, expand your horizons and stuff like that. So this coming Saturday till November 1st, you guys are able to support a major San Diego institution, support actors, support singing, support the opera, bohème, a good entry level. Like you said, a good entry level. Number one. And like I said, it's basically old school Rent. So
old school Rent. Love it.
Old school Rent. All right, man. So thanks for taking the time, man.
Yeah, anytime.
This has been Cheap Burrito. We'll talk soon, and I'm out.